Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Inspiring Brains podcast with Nick Theelen. My guest today is Ryan Niemiller from season 14 of America's Got Talent. He was the third place winner, and he was on America's Got Talent and America's Got Talent Champions. How are you doing today, Ryan?
Good. How are you, buddy? Been a
I'm
bit.
I'm great, man. Good to finally see you. And how you holding up in the U.S. right now? Things are a little bit crazy, I know. So
Oh yeah, it's a blast. It is a good time. I haven't worked since March, and we're one of the only countries in the world that progressively gets worse at dealing with this pandemic. So it's been very interesting, but
yeah,
trying to keep spirits up. I've been working on what projects I can from home. I
yeah.
took the time to move across the country, so I live in California now. So I've been getting some stuff done, but yeah, I'm itching to get back to work. So stay home and wear a mask, damn it.
Exactly. So, but that the move, everything must have been planned, right? But I guess it's good, having the little bit of time off, I guess, to be able to move and to get settled in.
It was originally planned for the end of this year. It was something that I kind of factored in because my schedule was full
Yeah,
for this year, so I was just going to be on the road touring, and it was a situation where my girlfriend and I decided, like, hey, Ryan, you're not going to have this much free time once everything gets going again. So
yeah,
let's go ahead and do this now. So it was stressful. It was really tricky trying to not freak out while you're moving you and a U-Haul and everything across the country and figuring out, can I stay at this hotel? Which hotel looks the cleanest?
yeah.
Um, because I'm not a diva with that type of stuff. I mean, I have my career is littered with sleeping in my car at dirty truck stops and things
Yeah.
like that. So I'm not like a clean freak, but like this is kind of serious. So you want to make sure you're safe. So it was stressful, but got all settled in. I like the inside of my apartment. I haven't really got to explore
Yeah.
much because everything's closed, but yeah, it's nice. It's cool to get it done and kind of be settled in here.
I've been doing stand up, myself for just over 5 years now, and you yourself are about 14 years in, and I'm just wondering if you can take me back to the first time you tried stand up and what it was like for you, what you remember about the experience.
A lot of it's a blur. Like, if you want to be technical, my very first stand-up show ever was in first grade when I was 6 years old. I have no idea what even made me know this was a thing, but like my class did this talent show, and for the most part, everybody was singing or playing a recorder poorly, something like that. But I decided, I was like, I'm gonna tell jokes. So I got like a couple joke books and found like 12 or so just really bad one-liner pun kind of jokes and did a performance. And then I didn't do it again for another 20 years. That was so officially I started in '06. I had I guess so. I got a theater degree from Indiana State University, and right after I graduated, I did like a 3 or 4 week summer gig, basically just acting in a play. As soon as that was over, I packed up my car and just drove to LA with intentions of starting stand up because I was dumb and didn't know you could start elsewhere. I thought you had to go to New York or LA. Uh,
Wow.
because I knew comedy existed other places,
Yeah.
like there was comedy clubs in Indiana and stuff, but like I thought you got sent from New York
Wow.
or LA, like they had like an assembly line of
Right.
packed
Right.
comedians that they just make and then send that way.
Yeah.
But when I got to LA, like I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what to do. So I think I don't even know if Google existed at the time, but I was like searching on like Lycos or whatever the equivalent search engine was at the time for like what kind, like where do you start comedy? And there was a class being taught at the Ice House in
Okay.
Pasadena. By I'm still friends with her to this day. Her name's Bobby Oliver. She's been doing comedy for 30, 40 years at this point. She was kind of just teaching a class, and that's sort of where I got started. My first official gig, and it's so sad. Like I remember the date, but I don't remember the exact venue because it was such a blur because I wasn't expecting to perform that night. It
Okay.
was, I know it was at a coffee shop, and I want to say maybe in San Dimas, California, or somewhere around there.
Yeah.
But I'd never been to an open mic. So I kind of went, the teacher of the class, Bobby, was going to be at that open mic. So I just wanted to go watch and kind of just see how an open mic works, because I'd never seen it before. And unbeknownst to me, she signed me up on the list.
Wow.
So I and you don't want to be put on the spot and then go no, I'm not going to do it. So I went up there. I told the jokes that I'm working on the class. That went fine. There was only 4 people in the building, so it wasn't like it was super stressful. Yeah. But I remember it was a blur. It was such a rush. Even if it was pretty, in the grand scheme, low impact, there wasn't industry there. It wasn't my AGT audition or anything like that. But at that, I was like, okay, I'm hooked on this. And then kind of went from there.
So that was the first time you tried it. Would you say that was the first time where you were like, okay, I might have something here, and I can develop this into something that people really enjoy and maybe make some money on it, or just have fun doing it?
It sounds strange, but even before that, I was like, if I get serious about this, I can make it happen. Mm-hmm. I'm somebody who I can be pretty lazy. I'll be honest with you, but if I'm passionate about something, I get it done.
Yeah,
and I'll put my full effort into it. I can't half-ass something I don't care about. But if you're like, okay, this is I loved comedy that. After that first set, I was like, yep, this is what I'm gonna do. I didn't know how I was gonna get there. There's so much you have to learn and figure out, and lots of ups and downs, and lots of almost quitting and then coming back and all that type of stuff. But I'd be lying if I said in that moment I was like, I could make money doing this, because you just don't know, and how the business works at that point. But I was definitely like, okay, this is I'm not just funny in my head. Some strangers actually liked what I did, so maybe we can cultivate this into something.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you auditioned for AGT prior to getting on the show for season 14?
Yeah, I had tried for about 5 years on and off. So it was through a multiple of channels. It was just showing up at one of the audition sites and kind of being in that long cattle call line where you just hope that someone sees you. I went and got auditions based on recommendations from past contestants on the show, like Taylor Williamson, who got second place, I want to say in season 8 or season 9. Right. I've been friends with him since near when I started. He's from Southern California. He kind of gave me, he suggested me to go through what actually finally got me on the show, because I guess I kept getting closer and closer before they pulled the trigger. In between my 4th attempt and my 5th attempt, I had a video go viral. So I had it was an old set that I recorded for a TV show called Laughs, aired on the Fox network. It was a syndicated show. And the full clip of that, Steve Hofstetter, after he bought Comedy Juice, he was kind of using those clips because Laughs was his show. So he was like, hey, do you care if we use that clip? We already have it. And I was like, I don't have to do any work whatsoever. And he's like, nope. And I was like, cool, let it go. And it ended up getting 1.6, 1.7 million views, something like that. And I was able to kind of go back to AGT and be like, hey, this happened since the last time we talked. Wow. What do you think about this?
People, I have somewhat of an audience that really enjoys what I'm doing.
Yeah, because that's part of it. And what they want to see, and this is what I sort of learned, and so if anyone's ever trying to, especially as a comedian, audition for America's Got Talent, what I was doing wrong the whole time is as a comic that the energy of the room is important to what you do. Mm-hmm. So if you're performing in a dive bar, that energy is different than a comedy club, is different than a theater, is different than, America's Got Talent. They're different crowds, different energies. Right. And so when you go in and audition, literally sometimes you're in this giant room at noon with one producer and a camera person, and that's it. So that's a weird energy as a stand-up comic. Right. But what they want to see, they don't care. They're not comedy people. They're TV people. They want to see what you look like on television. So you have to like trick your brain and go in there and pretend this is for television. So your energy is going to be high.
Yeah.
It's going to be weird. It's going to feel weird because you're not used to doing that. You're used to reading what they give you and then giving that and working with it. They don't want to see that because they don't have the time for projects. You know, they have to make a TV show. So once I kind of learned, and that video, since it was for a TV taping,
Right.
they were able to go, oh, that's what you look like on television. Got it. Come on in. You can audition for the judges.
So it's more like, did you kind of approach it in the sense of like maybe a filmmaker would with a script with like a 60-second pitch, like an elevator pitch?
Kinda, yeah, because that's the other thing too. Like, you know, as great as that show was for me, it's not designed for stand-up comedy.
No.
You know, doing 90 seconds to 2 minutes of comedy is not how stand-up usually works. It's hard to get anything done in that amount of time. I was used to I was a road headliner, you know, doing these kind of one-nighters and stuff. So I was doing 45 minutes to an hour every night. So you get into this rhythm and this pace of like, oh, you can warm them up and you can take 10, 15 minutes to really get them to let them get to know you and figure out what you're about. For this, you have to be boom, 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 boom. So so essentially that's what it is. You have to give them the hits and not mess around. You can't do long setups. You got to have a lot of punches in what you're doing. And I kind of tell stories, you know, like that's kind of how I do my comedy. So it was hard figuring out like those quick jokes that had a lot of hits. And so it's definitely it works your brain. It's a different muscle for sure.
Take me through the process of the show a little bit. Was it all taped at one time or
so AGT works the first 2 rounds. Now this year with the pandemic, all bets are off, so who knows how they're doing it.
Okay.
But the first 2 rounds were taped. So that initial audition and then the judge cuts, those are taped ahead of time. And that's not, you know, I'm not getting in trouble for that. That's not news. I mean, getting through the judge cuts, they literally tell you the prize is making it to the live shows. That's what you're working towards. So there's no, you know, there's nothing weird about that. But it was stressful. I will tell you that because, you know, I would have almost preferred it to be live going in because the show starts airing, at least for me, it started airing late May. The initial audition was taped in March, and then the judge cuts were taped in April. So in real time, obviously, I already knew I had done well and made it to the live shows, but you're not allowed to talk about it, so I could tell nobody. The only people that knew were my friends and family that were actually there. And then my like siblings who couldn't make it. So I let them know. But other than that, you have to keep it a secret because, you know, with those type of things, until it airs on television, it did not happen.
Right.
So exactly. Yeah. So if you spill the beans, they can just as easily be like, well, sorry, you're not there now.
Well, the reason I was asking that is primarily just because I was wondering how much of the how much did you possibly like adjust your material as you were going through it? You know, like did you? I mean, obviously you're getting a lot of feedback, you know, from fans and friends and all that sort of stuff. But did you at any point change things up based on opinions other than maybe like the producers telling you like, you know, please change this or do this in this way? Or
for me, like you can't, you get so many different opinions from fans and even your friends who are like, you should do this joke, you should do this joke, you should tell like stuff that they legitimately like. Like you get hit from so many different angles with that for me, I was like, I'm just gonna trust my own instincts on this. So because a lot of it you can't like in between the taping of the judge cuts and the live shows, we had a lot of time. It was from like April to August. So you have a lot of time to work on it. And that was the most stressful one because that's the one that the producers themselves have the most time to work with you too. So it's very particular what they're looking for. So, but the whole process of just trying to get jokes approved is difficult. And not for the reasons you would think. There's so many other things that exist. Like, for me getting, like, I didn't have a lot of problems. They trusted me for the most part, and just they like, okay, we assume that you know what works, so we'll work with you. We'll kind of let you do what you want, but here's the things we need to factor in as well. Okay. So there would be situations like getting a set approved. They were like, okay, well, that set's really funny, but there's not enough punches in it. So and they were right. There was a couple like sets that I pitched that had two really strong jokes, but it basically was 2 laughs only.
Okay.
And they want more than that. And it made sense. And they were totally right.
Yeah.
There were situations like obviously there's situation, and I never tried to get away with anything too risque, but clearly it airs on prime time. It's a family-friendly show. Yeah. You can't be dropping the F word or doing really gratuitous sex puns or anything like that. Yeah. So you have to factor that in. I had a weird one. I only basically had 2 jokes that outwardly had to be changed. Right. One was just bad timing, and one was just a silly thing that I didn't even think of. So without getting too specific into this, I don't want to just redo my set, but I did a joke about trying to get in shape, and my friend suggesting that I get a Fitbit. Right. And I was like, oh yeah, I heard Fitbits are a great way to lose some weight if you're fortunate enough to be born with wrists. Instead of counting my steps, I've been counting the amount of times I drop my Fitbit. Right. That's basically the joke. It's not dirty. There's nothing risque about it. But in the original joke, I say Fitbit 4 times. Yeah. And Fitbit is a brand name. It's not like, and Fitbit is not paying America's Got Talent for advertising. So they were like, oh, we can't have you say Fitbit that much. So I had to edit it down so I didn't say the word Fitbit 4 times. So like things you don't even think about. Yeah. And then the other one that I had trouble with, so it's for the semifinals. I do a joke about my friends getting mad at me that I don't want to learn to swim. And they come up with these nightmare scenarios of like when I would need to swim to try to convince me. And the original joke talks about it was essentially someone suggesting, what if you're on a boat and that boat starts to sink and there's no life jackets? What are you going to do? I'm like, well, I'm going to drown. And if I was on a boat, I was probably kidnapped. So I'm glad that the boat's sinking. I hope everybody dies. Like, that's kind of the joke. Right. Unfortunately, it was the right call for me to change the joke. But that week, there was this, I guess, a boat accident in California where like 38 people got trapped on a boat and basically died like during a night fire. So it was too fresh. And those are things that, like, obviously my joke isn't making fun of that, but the real world factors into things. You have to be able to be flexible because, like, obviously I couldn't have planned that. Yeah. But it was the right call because I would have told that joke as is. The audience in California would have groaned, and it would have made it look like I bombed on television. So you have to be flexible too. With each of your sets, did you go in with the mindset thinking that whatever I show the judges, whatever jokes I tell are essentially jokes that I have to retire from my act because then they've been on national television? Yes and no. It is one of those things that, like, now a lot of people that are coming to see me are seeing me because I was on AGT. Mm-hmm. So yeah, some of those jokes have to be retired now. There's certain ones that were new enough that I still kind of keep around and have tweaked a little bit. Yeah. To kind of make work. But and the other thing too, that's interesting, some of those jokes that I used were already retired. Like, I wasn't using them in my normal act really at all anyway. Right. But you kind of have to sometimes, really look into the archives to find stuff that's going to work for this. So for me, a lot of them were retired, not because I didn't like the jokes. I just had been doing them for a long time. And I would just wanted to do different stuff. So like my whole initial audition, all of those jokes I hadn't told in about 5 years before I did them on AGT. So some stuff I've just retired because they were just like, because people asked me to do the bits, so I know that they know them. And there's a couple of them that I kept in just because they're part of a bigger thing.
Yeah.
And it kind of flies in. But yeah, I mean that's it's totally my diamond necklace is too heavy situation of complaints. But once the jokes get on TV, they belong to TV.
The fact that you had to go through the process like 5 different times, and having the time, to better your act and get better over time. You think, obviously it was the right time for you to be a part of it, but obviously had you gone on earlier, do you feel like you would have been ready or?
No, had I got AGT the first time I tried, I would have crashed and burned. Right. No doubt. I'm confident that I would have had a really good audition.
Yeah.
I think just kind of my story and the novelty of what I do, it's so different than any other comic out there. Yeah. Like I think that would have got me a really good audition, but I didn't have the chops. I wasn't as good a comic, so I didn't have the material at that time to make it through that process. And I also wasn't like emotionally ready. Like that's stressful. Like the way that I was kind of doing the show, for it to really change your career in a huge way, you as a comic, you kind of have to make the finals. It's finals or bust. Right. You're going to get a little bump just from being on the show, but if you don't make the finals, nobody remembers you. Nobody cares. Right. So like there was a lot of pressure. Like it had to go well, and even like I was ready, but it was still, there was days where I was just like, oh shit, like this is I can't believe this is happening.
You're overthinking like, will they like it, or will what are they gonna think, or?
Oh, absolutely, and it's hard not to, because like I'm really confident in my material. That's why like any sort of when bookers or even like veteran comics have told me like over the years, like maybe you shouldn't talk about your arms, maybe like you shouldn't. I was like, no, like trust me, this is a unique point of view that people are gonna. Super confident in what I do, but you have no margin for error on that show. If you only get like 2 minutes, 2.5 tops, so like if I pick 2 jokes that were the wrong jokes for the situation, you're done. Like, so there's like, you don't get a retry. You don't get to just, you don't get to talk up there until you get your big laugh and then go home. Like, this is what you chose. It has to work.
And essentially, like, once you're cast to be on the show, unless they do like a redemption version of it or some kind of thing, that's your opportunity. And I don't know if are they allowed to bring back past contestants?
I mean, it's their TV show. They could do whatever the hell they want. If quite frankly, that's up to them. But yeah, I mean, but you're essentially right. Like if you get your chance and it doesn't, and you don't crush it, you're done. Like you can't go in there with the assumption that they're going to bring you back in 3 years. The only ones I've ever seen come back are comedy acts. So it's like people that were brought to be like, okay, this was a goofy audition. This was a memorable bad audition.
Right.
Those people will get brought back because like, oh, it's good at TV. But like, if you make the semifinals, they're not bringing you back to try again later. Maybe champions, like you can get to do champions possibly. Right. But like if you were really memorable, but you're not coming back to like try again in season 15. It has to work.
Well, and that's what I kind of got from, I had, before I had the chance to work with you, I had done another spot at that club before, and just seeing like from that experience, and it made me think that like, in order to be ready potentially for something like that, I have to have like, 5 or 6, at least 5 or more minute pieces that are killer, that all have to like crush hard, because like otherwise it's not at that level yet.
Yeah, and it's tough. You have to have, like, if your goal is AGT, something like that. Like I was saying earlier, you have to have a lot of punches. So it has to be quick. It has to be boom, 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 boom. A lot of punches. There has to be enough uniqueness in it, that it's all different. And then the other thing I think a lot of people forget, you have to be squeaky clean too. You got to remember, like sometimes they let you do a little innuendo if it's really clever wordplay, but like for the most part, like literally, this is for like families. This is for like, this is like parents watch it's like their family time. They'll watch it with their 7-year-old children. The amount of fan mail I got from parents, or like they're like, "Oh, my 7-year-old loves you. Can he come to the show?" And I'm like, well, my live show isn't quite the same. I'll meet the kid, I'll say hi and take a picture, but you'll have some explaining to do. But yeah, like when you're on there, you have to figure that in as well. And their version of clean isn't always what you think is clean. Yeah. There's so many comics, especially, and I was this way too. Starting off, I was like, "Oh, I'm clean. I don't say the F word." Right. That doesn't mean you're clean. It just means you don't say the F word. Right. So there, you have to have that. And then the other thing with AGT that makes it tricky is because they're not just a strict talent show. Like, the talent's important, but it's also, they're selling stories, they're selling personalities. So you have to have a dynamic story that you are willing to be vulnerable about and talk about and share. It's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be tragedy per se, but you have to be willing to open up and let them get to know you as a person. And some people, that's really uncomfortable. They don't want, like there was acts that I saw that like were killer on stage, but they struggled with that, like connecting and opening up because, for one reason or another, either it was too raw for them. For a lot of the contestants, it's tough because English wasn't their first language. So it was hard for them to, even if they were willing, it was just hard for them to communicate the same way. So there's a lot more that goes to it than just being good at what you do. Yeah.
So on the show, you talked a little bit about bookers not wanting to have you to headline or be part of shows. And I mean, I've only been doing this for 5 years, but I've kind of run into some of the same things where people have called me like a gimmick, or think that I'm only getting on a show because of my disability, or had some situations happen that were pretty tough. Like,
like I got that a ton coming up, and I mean, luckily there was enough people, and I worked hard enough that a lot of people didn't care. But like every booker in one way or another becomes like, the comedy gatekeepers. Like, they have this mentality of like, oh, I know better than everybody else, so this is what we're gonna do. And like, for me, it never made sense. Like, because it only seems that like comics with disabilities have this problem where being a quote unquote gimmick is a bad thing. Because like some of the most successful comedians in the world, look at Larry the Cable Guy. Right. That's completely a gimmick. It is. Jeff Dunham is a gimmick. And they're two of the most, even someone like, like that's not quite that obvious, but like Gabriel Iglesias, who I love. I'm fluffy. Like, that's a gimmick. Yeah. It's not like they're fun, but like at the end of the day, are you getting laughs and do people want to see you? Mm-hmm. That's all that should matter. If you don't personally like that I make jokes about my arms, fine. But like, I've literally gotten standing ovations because I crushed so hard. And then the booker was like, well, I don't know if our people like jokes about disabilities. It won't really work here. Right. And I'm like, well, it worked there because I got a damn standing ovation. Like it never made any sense. Right. I don't know why people want comics with disabilities to normalize themselves. It makes no sense to me. Because again, I'm not going to be for everybody, but nobody is. Right. And at the end of the day, my arms are unique. It's something that's different. If I don't talk about my disability, sure, I'll have my own points of view, but I'm a mid-30s white bearded male comic at that point. Right. There are us by the billions out there. So like what I would say, and I don't think I need to tell you this, but anyone that might be in a similar situation to us, if people are like that, at the end of the day, funny is what matters. If you're funny, you're going to have to work harder. But, man, screw those guys. They don't know what they're talking about. Because I've been told for years that talking about your arms will never work. and then I got third place on America's Got Talent, and I'm buying a house.
One of the things I struggle with a little bit, especially like some people in the audience, obviously people will heckle, but the thing I find toughest is when there's people in the crowd that are like, ah, or they feel bad for me, and it's like that's the hardest thing to deal with because I haven't really figured out quite how to approach it yet, because it's like I could make fun of the person, but like it's a tough one because like the thing is like I don't, it's not like you just got a puppy for Christmas. Like I'm here to make people laugh, not upset you. It's like
the way that I always tried to deal with that, because that was always my least favorite sound. I would rather have someone say you suck than go aw. Yeah. And the way that I always looked at it personally, if it happens once, it's just a sensitive person or like a one-off. If you tell a joke and it gets awes more often than not, or even a decent chunk, the joke's wrong. Right. You got to fix the joke some way. Because my act is particularly crafted. Like, I'm not, like, you watched what I did. I'm not ashamed to talk about my disability. I don't hide from it. But I didn't get any sympathy. I didn't get any awes. And that takes years. It took years of crafting, because there are things that to us are hilarious. Right. But to other people, they're going to be like, that's horrible. You had to deal with that? Yeah. We've kind of gotten over it enough where it's funny. Right. You have, but like if the way that you're telling it is still getting that sympathy response, there's something wrong with how you're telling it. You got to change gears a little bit to make it so you don't get it. It's, and I think this with it's not just jokes about disabilities; it's jokes about anything. Yeah. If you tell a joke that even if you don't mean it this way, but people are offended by it a lot, or like more than they just think it's funny, then you don't get to tell them not to be offended. Right. You can either decide that that offense is worth pushing through and you're going to like, suck it, I'm doing it anyway. Or you have to understand that I hate this conversation that so many comics have about, oh, the world's too PC. No, the world changes. You don't get to tell people what's offensive to them. Yeah. You get to decide if them being offended is worth you still telling that joke or not. At the end of the day, this is a business. If I tell a joke that like 75% of the time gets people mad, it's a bad joke. I'm not making money off it. So stop with this PC nonsense, everybody.
Yeah, it's not really. Yeah, I would say from my perspective, it's not really because the joke itself is offensive. It's because they feel bad for my situation. It's like I just deal with the cards I'm dealt, like any other person.
Yeah, and that's just something like eventually, and I'm sure you're in the process of it. Every time you do a show, there's just little things you're going to learn. Like for me, it was just be loud and confident.
Yeah,
you can't feel bad for me. My life's awesome. What is what is wrong with you people? Yeah. I have famous friends and I get to travel and I was on television. Like, suck it. Like, my life's great. You don't get to feel bad for me.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing that I think I'm working on as I develop, and it's a tough line for me to figure out because I'm about 100. You met me, so I'm about 100 pounds, and a fairly skinny guy on stage, and I try to move around as much as I can. But if I ever like yell or get really aggressive, people kind of get a bit shocked, and then they hold back, and that's tough too. So it's about finding that balance for sure.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, and it's finding what's authentic to you. Right. If people don't, because like I don't picture you as a guy who yells like just anyway. I don't picture you just being a guy who's like gets fired up. Like if his team loses, it's like mother. I don't see you being that guy anyway. You still have to be authentic to you. You don't. Like for me, being confident just means being louder than everybody. Like that's kind of how it works for my personality. You just got to figure out what works for you and realize like at the end of the day, that's your stage. So they're going to deal with whatever you do. They don't have to like it. They're not people aren't obligated to like what you do. But when you're up there, that's your time.
Yeah, to develop it as you want. So. But I was wondering what your particular writing process is like for you. Are you a person who sits down pen to paper? I know I record all my stuff personally, and then I listen to them or I video them if I get the chance. But.
Oh, for me, I have never sat down with a pen and paper and written a joke that works. That particular style does not work for me, or at least hasn't up to this point. Because what happens for me if I try to write that way, if I grab this pen here and I'm like, oh, it's writing time. Let's do an hour of writing. Right. Instead of just thinking what I think is funny.
That's my fiance.
Hello, fiance. But like instead of like just sitting there and thinking, okay, what do I think is funny? My brain starts going, what do people think is funny? People like dogs. What can I write about dogs? Like my brain doesn't become authentic to me. I just start trying to write what I think people are gonna like, and it never works. So my writing style has always been just whenever I'm doing something, keep my ears and eyes open,
right,
and just let those situations happen. Because if you write, at least, again, this is just for me, but if you write your life experiences, and it doesn't have to be major things like living with a disability, but like if you're writing things that happen to you, it's going to be hard for anyone to copy you because that actually happened to you. That's your life. This happened to you at the store. It didn't happen to me at the store. It happened to you. So I keep my ears and eyes open. If something triggers, like I see something that's funny, I'll make a note in my phone. And then if I still feel good about it in a couple days, I'll try it at an open mic or I'll throw it into a show that I'm doing. I've never written a joke word for word. I've never sat down and written like, this is how the joke beats out. I try it on stage and I trust my comedy voice enough that I can construct it in some sort of way with setup punch. And then I workshop it that way until I feel, okay, this is where I want it to be. And then it's part of the act then.
What is, over all the years that you've worked, what is your most memorable road story? Like, you know, obviously I've done a few weird gigs myself. Is there any that stand out for you that you remember?
One of the best ones, this one was actually pretty close to home when I was living in Indianapolis. So at least I didn't have to travel too far for this, or I probably would have been more disappointed, but I'd never seen anything like this in my life. So we were doing a Sunday show at this bar in Indianapolis, and barely anyone was there. So there was maybe, this was probably 4 or 5 years ago at this point. So before AGT, before any of that, there was maybe 5 real audience members there that were there for the show, and then probably 2 or 3 career alcoholics who would be there anyway.
Yeah.
So when we get in, the jukebox is playing, and it's Sunday, so there's some football games that are just on the TV, but they're muted because the jukebox is going. Fine. So we get out there, turn the jukebox off. We didn't even turn the TVs off, so the TV's still on. I was supposed to headline, so the host goes up there, starts telling his jokes, you know, whatever. Right. One of the drunks at the bar starts heckling.
Yeah.
And nothing even crazy, just standard drunk guy at a dive bar heckling that I'm sure you've seen. I've seen 1,000 times, whatever. Yeah. So the host kind of gives it back to him a little bit. Ha ha ha. Like, thinks it's all in good fun, but it's like, oh, we were told we can do the show. We're doing the show. The guy's complaining that he can't hear the football games. He couldn't hear them before. But whatever.
Volume was off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the host, I guess, says something, and I don't remember exactly what he said. I don't have the memory of that. But I guess he insulted this drunk at the bar in some way that when the feature went up, that drunk called the owner of the bar, told him what happened. In the middle of the feature set, the show got canceled. So it was the weirdest thing. So the feature got to finish his set, and then the host went up and was like, well, this has never happened before, but I just got word from the owner that the show is canceled. So good night, everybody. I still got paid. I was only making like $50 or something like that. But I had never seen like, and it made sense from a business standpoint. Like that career drunk spends more there in a week than we brought in for that comedy show. So if that guy like threatened to, but it was this, I've never seen a show canceled midstream by a heckler who called the owner. It was the craziest thing. Easiest $50 I've ever made. I didn't have to perform, so it was nice.
Wow, yeah. I was gonna, because me, I've performed at like weird places like strip clubs or wherever they'll allow an open mic, which is strange in itself. But yeah, that's never mid show. And one thing I wanted to ask about, I myself grew up in a trailer as well because my parents built their own house, and so that story kind of resonated with me. In particular, I remember when I was growing up. So our setup, we had like a washer and dryer on one side, and the bathroom was on the other side. So if we were ever doing laundry, the whole floor would shake, and it would cause the toilet to basically become like this nice like massage toilet almost. That's what I remember from the entire like years of living there, that's like the thing I miss. But is there any like stories, that from growing up being a trailer park kid, I guess that.
Like growing up in a trailer, like it does weird stuff to your brain. Like, this is how it works for everyone to some extent. But like when you are really young and growing up, you just don't know the world yet. So that's your perspective of how you think everything is.
Yeah.
Like when you're really young, like when I was like 6, 7, 8 years old, I love living in a trailer park because my friends are so close to me.
Right.
Look how close all these trailers are. It's so easy to go see all my friends. And then you hit like a certain age, you turn like 11, and you're like, oh no, everyone is so close to me. This is terrible. Yeah, but the trailer was weird because we were packed in there too. So like I'm one of 4 kids. So there was 6 of us in there. I didn't have a bed until I was in college. And you don't realize how weird that is until you start meeting other people and they're like, what do you mean you didn't have a bed? How the hell didn't you have a bed? Yeah, we always had issues, in our trailer, like by the end of it, before we moved out, I was probably 13, 14 when we started renting a house at that point. But like my dad was like he was one of those guys that like always had these like ideas, like I'm gonna fix that, and then just never did.
Yeah.
So I remember one day waking up. So we had developed this hole in the bathroom floor, like just the wood ate out. So there was this hole, and my dad worked a lot, but like temporarily he had put like just a piece of plywood over the hole.
Right.
With intentions to fix it, but that ended up lasting months because my dad's just one of those guys that I'll do it, and then just doesn't do it. Yeah. And eventually, what made it get fixed is the day that I woke up and there was a possum on my pillow. Because in the middle of winter, these possums were climbing into the house for warmth because they could get in through that hole. And being like 9 years old. And like having the first thing you see when you open your eyes is like a possum literally staring you in the face. Like then like a family of them walked over my brother because he was sleeping on the floor too in another room. And and that's not normal. You're not supposed to have possums on your pillow. So trailer life is weird. It made me strong, but I'm glad I hopefully won't ever have to do that again.
I have one other question for you.
Sure.
I know you're a big fan of like video games and stuff, and I was just wondering, do you take like a list of all the video games that you're still looking to get with you on the road, or do you have a big collection? What is it like?
Oh yes, so that is my road vice. So a lot of comics are trying to pick up women, or it's drinking, or whatever it is. I am so squeaky clean on all that stuff, but I love video games. I've always loved video games, and I have a collector's mentality. I don't just want to play stuff. I like to display as well. You can probably see the Pac-Man. I think it's over here. Yeah. That's a Pac-Man board game that I bought. So I own probably a good 2,000 games from all kinds of systems, going from like Atari to now. I actually have a couple apps that are on my phone and on my computer that you can track your collection with. And that's kind of how I know. Because I got to a point where my collection was just getting big enough. I was accidentally rebuying things.
Okay.
because I couldn't remember, did I buy it or did I want to buy it? And then I would accidentally rebuy it again. So thank God for these apps because it helps keep everything together. And then the cool thing is too, because I don't talk about it all the time, but I'll post that I'm playing video games, like on my Instagram and things like that. So like occasionally like fans will bring old games they don't want anymore to me at a show, and like if they bring me enough, like I'll give you some free stickers or I'll give you a free shirt, because for me, like growing up poor, like we didn't have nothing, but there was always stuff that you wanted that you couldn't have just because we didn't have the money for it, and there was 4 kids and we couldn't all have these huge collections of things. Right. So now that I'm an adult, like I want to have all the cool stuff I didn't get to have as a kid. So video games is a big one. So I collect with that stuff. So if anyone watching has any games they don't want, hit your boy up. All right, I'll take them off your hand.
Wrestling ones in particular, like WWF No Mercy or any of those classic wrestling games that you?
Oh yeah, I got those. Like, I got the N64 ones. I have a lot of old wrestling games. I'm obviously a big wrestling fan. Cool. That's where the Cripple Threat name came from. But yeah, man, like I'm a completionist collector. So there's obviously games that I want because I love them and they're great games. But I like to have complete sets of things. So I also have, a lot of like Barbie's Dream Fun House, convertible machine.
I like it, yeah.
Because like that's how you complete the collection. Like they're not high priority. I'm not at the point yet where I'm spending hundreds of dollars for a weird Barbie game that might be rare or whatever.
That's cool.
I like to have complete sets. It gives me something to work for, because not to get too serious, but the road can be lonely. Like traveling on the road, as much as I love the shows and I'm very fortunate that I get to go to all these places and perform, you're still spending time away from your friends, you're away from your family, you spend a lot of time just in hotels or driving or airports. So this gives me something positive to kind of focus on when I'm in these places where I might not know anybody. At least I can find the local video game store and see if I can find some cool stuff for my collection.
And as a feature headliner, you're not doing as many like road gigs with comics, right? Are you, or has that changed?
Luckily, with just kind of how everything happened after AGT, for the most part, I'm able to bring my road opener with me. He's a guy I've known for like 9-10 years. We both started in the Midwest. His name's Dave Yates. I highly recommend looking him up. It's Yates Comedy on all social media. He makes and sells his own hot sauce, which is kind of very cool. It's called Ha Ha Hot Sauce. Go to hahahotsauce.com. You can order a bottle. Help the boy out, because when I'm not working, he's not working, and that's kind of how the world is right now.
Yeah.
But that's also helped a lot. Like finally having enough. I don't want to say, like, I'm obviously not this huge celebrity, but I have enough clout where I can at least bring my friends with me. And that makes the road a little bit better, because we're both we'll be away from our girlfriends, we'll be away from our families, and stuff like that. So it's nice to at least have your buddy with you. Because if you're randomly getting set up with people, sometimes it turns out awesome and that person's amazing. Sometimes they are just not somebody you want to spend free time with. And this at least helps you, like, I know I like Dave, so let's bring him with.
All right. Well, before you go, I know people, if they want to find out more about you or follow you, they can follow you on Facebook at CrippleThread8 or on Twitter. Is there any projects or things you're working on in the future that you want to highlight or mention?
It's a little too early on the projects to kind of have anything definitive, but I'm working on my own podcast, trying to come up with some ideas for like some video shows, things like that. So we're definitely we got some stuff in the cards. Like having this free time has been nice, because I was going pretty hard.
Yeah.
And you don't have time for a lot of that when you're every weekend. You're just new city, new city, new city, new city. So this has kind of been nice to kind of recharge, reset. So follow the social medias, like you said, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. It's at CrippleThread8. When I have stuff more definitive, I'll be announcing all that there. But even if not, just come say hi. If you're a fan of what I do, I definitely appreciate it. I'm very interactive with my fans. So chances are, if you say hi, I'll at least say hi back. It's the least I can do because no one has to care. So yeah, hit me up on there and keep watching. We got some cool stuff coming.
And for now, are you just selling the merch at the shows? Do you have an online store or anything where people, like, given COVID, can they support you right now with buying stickers or anything like that?
They can. I usually do that kind of on a case by case. We didn't have an online store set up yet. But there has been people that are like, "Hey man, I was going to come to the show and I wanted some stickers. Can you send me some?" And I'm like, "Yep." And I can work it that way too. So,
okay, cool.
So if you really want stuff, if you want a Club Nub shirt, if you want a Cripple Threat, it looks similar to this right here. I have stickers for that. The stickers are donations. The shirts are $25. So if it's something that you like again, like I know a lot of people have it much worse than I do right now. I luckily had some money in the bank, and I know a lot of people are out of work. A lot of people have lost their jobs. I mean, people are sick, and people definitely have it worse than me. But if you want to throw a little support, I won't tell you no. So.
All right. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate the opportunity to get to meet you and to share the stage with you. And hopefully, when all this kind of clears up, you'll be able to maybe come across to Canada one day, or I'll be able to come to the U.S. once we're able to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If Canada ever lets Americans back up there, I wouldn't let us up there right now, truth be told. But yeah, good talking to you, my friend. Always a pleasure.